Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to a spiritual morning, a soulful morning. Let's just be so grateful for a wonderful day by closing our eyes and praying for a magical day ahead. Let's check our postures, our back straight, our feet firmly placed on the ground below or in a cross-legged position, or one that you decide is comfortable for you to go inwards. There are no set rules for spirituality. How we can go inwards depends completely on us and our energy. But these so-called defined postures help us a bit better if we are struggling with ourselves. Today, let's be grateful for a wonderful morning. For newness, new beginnings, teaching us that there's always something new to look forward to, teaching us that everything must end. Nothing is constant, except for the soul being eternal, which is what all of us gathered here are here to understand, experience, and go down a bit deeper into this world of total bliss. By now, we're aware of giving, giving what we are born with, that we're completely full of love and light. But what we also need to understand is that oftentimes we, as human avatars, the way we are living, are gripped with uncertainty, with fear. And we can't even see what we have. And we're always in a process of gaining more and more and more. I need more of this, I need more of that. Only if I have this, will I be complete, will I be happy, then this, then that, and that. But we forget to take a pause, a relaxed spiritual pause. Yes, everybody wants a great lifestyle. Who will not? But do I have it in me to get that lifestyle? Which trajectory am I going in my life? Of dreaming, procrastinating, and not doing a follow-up list to make the dreams into reality. Everybody is a dreamer. But am I a doer? Do I wish to traverse on that materialistic path? Or do I wish to go inwards in my soul journey? Or do I wish to do both of them? Nothing is right, nothing is wrong. What am I inching towards? Where is my consciousness? Let's ask ourselves this question. Can I arrive in my life daily morning, wake up to excitement, happiness, or bliss? Or joy, or waking up to aches and pains and unfulfilled dreams, a sense of not being complete. The one thing which we human beings are blessed is with a choice at every moment, at every step, step to step, moment to moment. It's important to go inwards and ask ourselves, who am I? I am not this person, this body, and I have heard 100 billion times, a gazillion times, that I am made of five elements and I will return to the five elements. This body is just a costume that lives for its age that it's planned. Could, can I be in conjunction? Can I be in alignment? Can I relate with myself? Or am I still unavailable for my own self? Am I still a muddled up being? Or am I crystal clear? Am I still thinking, what next? So, can I remind myself that it's completely upon me and nobody else? Can I finally learn to take responsibility for every single action of mine and not continue to blame game, to play the blame game? It's so easy to shrug responsibility away and to own up something that good happens in my life and to disown something which isn't meant to be or something that doesn't go the right way. But what if I tell myself that every single action, every single choice if I make will determine the path of my future, good or bad, I own it. And then I give my 100% to it fearlessly because now there's no fear. Even if it's bad, I own it. Am I still thinking what people will say? When will I start living for myself? I've heard so often that we all come alone, we go alone. If that's the truth, then why am I still stuck with these 100 million thoughts of my responsibility towards people? And even if I am doing what I am doing for them, don't I need some time for myself, my dreams? Am I wasting this precious life that I have been given and I've chosen at a soul level to further on its purpose? Have I found the purpose? Have I connected with myself? Have I tried to relate my own name's meaning, thinking that as a baseline, a guideline for my future or my this life's purpose? Am I comfortable in giving a mediocre life to my family by saying that I don't get what I want, so I'm not giving what I can? Everybody expects a rich life, materialistically rich. So am I in that flow? Am I able to provide for? Can I break myself away from this? I'm not a monk. I'm not a nun. That I can leave the householder's duty and go off, just going inwards. But then being a householder, how can I intertwine my life's purpose, my soul's purpose into my being, into my essence, and strike a balance with all the bodies that I've been given? There are bodies that we know of, physical, mental, emotional, etheric, but there's so many other bodies, bodies of known unknowns, unknowns known. The cosmic body, the astral body, there's so much. Where am I in life? Who am I in life? Am I the sort of kind of a person who starts something and stop and doesn't take it to fruition? Because I think I started with different intention, it's not going that way, so I leave it. And then how do I feel about me? Why do I have to decide on 10 things? Why can't I decide on one thing at one time and take it to completion? And then even if midway I know it's not working for me, at least complete something at hand. Am I in integrity with myself, with my life? Or am I dwindling away my time? Who do I think I am and who do I think I'm becoming? Whatever is in the past is in the past. Whether I was a good version, medium version, bad version. But who am I here? What seeds am I sowing here? Because my future depends upon my present, and that's the truth. Everything can change in a moment, and that moment is now. These mornings have been given to me as a gift to think about what I'm creating, to think about the option given to me, the privilege given to me, the opportunity given to me to be the change. Am I the change? How much time do I work on self development? How much time do I spend on spirituality? Which means my spirit's actual reality, my own truth. Do I connect with my higher self? Do I connect with myself? It's comparatively easy to do a guided meditation, but the real meditation is to be in flow with one's breath, to be quiet, to be in awareness about one's higher self, to be in touch, to have a conversation or to hear. But have I been able to go there yet? Or is there a veil of fear lying there as well? Life is full of beautiful opportunities, full of it. Am I wasting these opportunities, these gifts that I've been given every other day? I'm carrying so many soul gifts with me, which means whatever I've excelled in my past lives, they come to me in this life as a gift. Am I aware of my gifts? Can I try and see what am I good at? Can I try and see how can my gifts help others, even if the others is just one? How do I feel when I'm completely silenced
for a moment or two? Am I now wanting to hear something more? I'm like, okay, what next? Or am I enjoying the moment of silence? In fact, when another voice comes and I'm silent, I'm like, oh, it's invasion. Can I learn to be quiet and go inwards? We all have been given a set number of breaths. Are we overbreathing? Which means shallow breaths. But are we now learning to live a life of yogic breathing? Which means deeper breaths. There's so much to do. What if I start doing it bit by bit by bit and not have huge goals? And even if I have huge goals, I just break them down to few smaller, simpler, doable, achievable, tangible goals. Can I promise myself to evaluate my life in terms of the 6 categories that I choose for myself to make my goals? And not just goals. With that, a to-do list. And remember that it's not only one that I'm working on 5 or 6 facets. So whatever I decide should be doable. May I be softly reminded that it's me who is the creator of my life. I am blessed with the goddess energy, divine energy, to do what my path has been chosen for. And even if I go astray, I know I'll come back on track. That's because I know I'm a person in progress. Life is such a blessing. I am a blessing, whether I realize or not. I am blessed. I am abundant. It's very important to understand who I am. And the more I go deeper, the more I understand my own journey. And with this promise, let's again plan a timeline for us to work on ourselves. And when you're ready, face the beautiful world while we read this beautiful book, Miracles Happen, story about healing story about letting go, story about going with the flow. And we are now on this beautiful page where we start the section called Hardship and Hope. Clop, clop, clop. The horse held a steady and cautious pace as it exited the wooden area and entered the town. The woman on the horse rode through the main streets of shops and businesses, waving at familiar faces. She wore a dark wool riding skirt and jacket, and her long braids were fastened closely to her head. With her unusually small frame, she looked like a doll mounted on the thoroughbred stallion. The townspeople gestured their respect for her as she passed. She was a skilled courier who delivered items from town to town, often through empty and dangerous territories of the southwestern United States in the 1800s. She thrived on the speed and skill of riding the stallion. The woman was a smaller rider by any standards, and the dearly loved horse towered over her. She managed him with great speed and dexterity throughout the dry, dusty land. People did not judge her for taking an unorthodox role because her job was so appreciated and her skill was so highly respected. Likewise, her focus was on her work, the love of her horse, and management of the danger that she faced. On one of her routes, she sped across a dusty southwestern stretch, up a rounded hill, and through a set of mesa tables and staples. This required her to ride slowly, anticipating every step of the stallion's hoof. A slow pace made her a target for the warring Apache natives, who were known to attack. She rode the pass many times, but on her last ride, a group of 5 native men hid in the mesa staples and overtook her. She was forced to watch as her horse was furiously and senselessly murdered. The woman was raped repeatedly by the leader of the group, a giant in comparison to her small childlike frame. His face, paint, and feathered headdress sickened her. She was disgusted and traumatized by his senseless murder of the valuable horse, but not terrified as he had intended. The band of warring natives left her to die within the steeple pass, but she was able to walk back to her family's ranch. When she arrived and returned to health, she put away her wool suit, cut her hair, and sat in the armchair and looked out to the hills she rode. The rest of her life was spent mourning the horse and her life as a courier. In the backdrop of her life was a stable hand who secretly loved and admired her. He spent the rest of his life watching over her, even though she was inattentive of his presence and love for her. She never moved on past the loss of her youth. I, of course, was that woman. I carried into this lifetime a love for horses and small riding skill, and I practiced ever present compassion and respect for animals. I brought stamina for hardships into this lifetime and can move on with hope, something that I could not do as a horse courier. And most importantly, as I observed the sad courier sitting in her armchair, I learned that we must move on about after tragedy. There are always gifts, like the loving, stable worker on the other side of difficulty, says Alice. Time is not measured for minutes or hours or years. Time is measured in lessons learned. Alice has mastered this wisdom. She has learned to overcome grief's power to immobilize, to freeze time, and she's now able to move on. There are always gifts, there's always love on the other side. Human beings create such misery in the world with their penchant for violence and for killing. Spiritual beings aware of higher dimensions, multiple lifetimes, and cosmic karma repair the world by nurturing and protecting all life. As we fully evolve from human beings into spiritual beings, we will comfort and heal each other's pain rather than cause it. Alice easily let go of the sorrow that she had experienced in her prior lifetime as a courier. Michelle, the author of the next story, was able to accomplish a similar feat. It does not matter whether the loss is fresh or ancient, with the awareness of the endurance of our bonds and of our souls, its burden can lighten and disappear in mere moments. Let's read a story about releasing grief. As I stared out at the sea of expectant looking faces in front of me, my heart began to beat wildly in my chest. I hadn't realized how many people were in the audience until I reached the front of the room, where I now sat perched on a chair next to Dr. Brian Weiss. I resisted the urge to look in the direction of my husband, for I could feel him frowning at me. My face felt red and hot as I realized what I had just committed myself to. I was about to be hypnotized in front of several hundred people who were going to watch the whole thing. What if I can't remember a past life? What if I make a total fool of myself? As I had these thoughts, the faces of the former selves that I had seen during the group regression over the past couple of days began to drift into my mind's eye in a colorful parade. Feeling somewhat reassured, I then looked around the room at the faces of the audience in front of me. They looked friendly and supportive, some even smiling warmly when my eyes brushed past theirs. Dr. Weiss, who had been addressing the audience while I became acclimated to the stage, turned and spoke softly, directly to me. I focused on his instructions, the soothing sound of his voice calming me instantly. This is going to be okay, I reassured myself. He smiled and nodded at me as if he had heard my thoughts and was giving his reply. I relaxed a bit in my chair, ready to give myself over to whatever was about to happen. I could hear Dr. Weiss's voice, which seemed far away, telling me that I could see a door in front of me. He then informed me that on the other side of the door, I could encounter a memory from my childhood. I could hear him counting backward from three, and in my mind, the door began to swing open. And just as he had said that it would, I eagerly walked through it in my mind, anxious to discover that what I would find on the other side. Stepping into the brilliant light that laid behind the door, as I felt if I needed to blink from the brightness, even though my eyes were firmly shut, I looked down at the floor and saw linoleum with yellow and white print. There were countertops, cupboards, and a sink with a window above it that was covered with pleasant yellow curtains. The light that streamed into the window had a sunny, mid morning quality to it. There's a large olive green refrigerator next to the sink, from which a low humming sound emanated. Dr. Weiss began to question me about what I was experiencing, and when I spoke to answer him, I was surprised to hear that I was using a voice much softer and lower than my usual speech. I'm in my kitchen, I said, although the room was completely unfamiliar to me. It was not my kitchen that I could remember, and it suddenly dawned on me that it was from the house that we had moved out of when I had been only 3 years old. Upon that realization, I looked down at my own body and saw that I was a baby. Sitting up in a high chair, I saw my pudgy legs below me, and I could feel the sticky vinyl seat on my skin. It was clearly from a time well before my earliest memory, which had been around the age of 4. I'd never remembered anything at all from the few years that we had lived in the house where I was born. What is that you're doing? Dr. Weiss asked. Eating applesauce in my high chair. My automatic response surprised me. I could almost taste the bland baby food in my mouth. And then I saw her. She was sitting in the wooden chair in front of me, holding a small spoon in her hand. Her broad smile made her high cheekbones look like two rosy apples, and her beautiful green eyes crinkled at the corners. Mama, I thought as a tear started to run down my cheeks. My mother is with me, I whispered. The moment the words left my lips, I felt an overwhelming sense of love. Was that really my mother? I did not think that I could remember her, but there she was, sitting in front of me. My heart was so full of emotion that I felt as it would burst as I sat there looking at her. She had died so long ago, this woman who gave me life and who left me with no working memories of her whatsoever. Yet there she was in front of me, cooling and smiling. It almost felt as if I were truly in the kitchen, that I had been transported back in time. She was real and I was there with her. I sat with my eyes closed, savoring the feeling of being cared for by her. She was there with me. She did not have to live to watch me grow into the woman that I'd become. She who had left a large gaping hole inside me. I had missed her every day, despite the fact that I could never even picture when her face had looked like. My joy in the moment that I beheld was indescribable. Gazing at her smiling face, I could feel how much she loved me, how much she had loved being a mother, and how much she enjoyed spending time with me. I could hear her speaking in a soft, soothing voice, and the sound of my name escaping her lip was the most beautiful noise I'd ever heard. The tears continued to fall as though was not nothing save that moment of pure bliss, but I was fully aware that it was only a memory. Oh, how I longed for her. I could then again hear the kind voice of Dr. Wise telling me that it was time to leave the scene behind. My heart ached at the thought that I was willing to do as he asked. His words were gentle, prodding me onward and promising me that I would remember the scene. This memory had been brought to the surface after having been buried deep in my subconscious for so long. I knew without a doubt that the image of my mother's face would never fade from me again. He instructed me to move back to the door that I had constructed in my mind, and as I did, the scene in the yellow kitchen instantly disappeared. Feeling strangely effervescent, almost as if I had been charged with electric energy, I had never been so completely alert or alive, although my body was a limp and nearly useless object on the chair. Suddenly, a second door appeared in front of me and opened. The moment I went through it, I was hit by a strong smell that was instantly recognizable as a salty scent of sea air. I'm near the ocean, I thought. Although I was aware of the fact that physically I was indoors inside a conference room, upon being instructed to look down, I saw a pair of dirty bare feet. My clothes consisted of a burlap snap that had been crafted into a makeshift pair of pants, which were tied onto me with the rope at my waist. I could feel the coarse material against my legs. I could hardly believe when I saw what I looked at my hands. My fingers were fat and my hands were massive, filthy, ankylosed. They belonged to a man, the one who used them to do very hard work. Whose hands are they? The answer came with complete assurance from deep within me, and it spread over my entire being. These were my hands. I looked around me, and right away I could see the ships I was on wooden docks surrounding a seaport of some kind, and I was unloading heavy barrels from the ships which had just arrived from the New World. The year 1689 popped into my mind, firmly appearing as if from nowhere. As the name of the port city, Barcelona, rum was being struggled. Sorry, rum was being imported from the New World inside these heavy barrels under which I struggled. The work was difficult and physically taxing, but I didn't mind it too much or feel the need to complain. I was not very intelligent, and perhaps I did not know any kind of work other than this back-breaking labor. As Dr. Weiss moved me from this scene, I saw myself inside a small wooden shack like structure on the dirty floor. My home. The house was only one room, and I could tell that we were extremely poor. At one end, there was a stone fireplace in which a large black metal pot hung over a fire. Something pungent was cooking in the pot. Several mattresses stuffed with straw were on the floor in one corner, and a few rough blankets lay on top of them. I immediately sensed several presences in the house. Turning, I saw three small children standing there, all dressed in dirty rags. The connection that I felt to them was so palpable that it nearly choked me. Their familiarity, however, was undeniable. And I knew beyond any doubt that these were my children. I loved these three little souls whom I had never met with all my heart. I looked again towards the fireplace and saw a pleasant looking woman in a long dress. She had a white cap on her head and she was busily stirring something in the pot over the fire. She was my wife. A lump forward in my throat came towards love and longing. As I gazed at her, she turned around and I momentarily startled to see that. Unlike the children, details of her face were very, very clear. I looked deep into this woman's eyes and recognition instantly washed over me. It was my mother. Nearly in disbelief, I sat there and watched her in my mind's eye. She had the same eyes, the same distinct apple like cheekbones that she had in this life. But even more powerful than appearance, I could feel her energetically. This beloved wife of mine was the same woman who'd given birth to me in this life. I knew it in the core of my being, and I gazed at her. I could feel how much we loved each other. I started to see scenes of our life together, moving in rapid succession as I painted a beautiful picture of a relationship based on mutual adoration. She greeted me each evening with a warm smile and an embrace after my long day of difficult labor. Although we were impoverished and it was an endless struggle to survive, we were so happy together. She accepted a simple life with all of these difficulties. This is what real love is. A flicker of a thought entered my mind, a sudden realization that my content marriage seemed like second rate in comparison. This is what I want. I want to find, I want I said to myself as I basked in the perfect balance and spiritual love that I had for this woman. Finding real love is the most important thing we can do in life. And then when we find it, we must give it in return. The thought floated into my mind on a current and I felt like a song. Did I just think that? I wondered, as it had been a much wiser message than I thought I knew how to deliver. Moving ahead a few years in time, I saw myself in the same house. I stood on the dirt floor as a choking sadness hit me as a dull knife. My wife was lying in the corner on one of the straw mattresses, covered by a rough blanket. She was ill. Her skin looked very grey, and a cough kept startling me. Out of what I could feel was a downward spiral of grief and anguish. I had tried everything that I could to help her, but her extreme poverty prevented any real medical care. She was about to die. As acknowledged this, my ever-extending grief spiral darkened as I realized how angry I was. I was being pulled down into a sheer misery that was unlike anything I'd ever known. My rage mixed with unimaginable sadness and then flowed out of me, leaving behind a numb emptiness. I was sitting in a chair, staring into space, fully wrapped up inside my dark emotions. My three children were there, huddled together in the corner. I could feel their fear as they held to each other and watched their dying mother, not working to comfort my still young family, young children in any way or nurture them, through which was undeniably a painful and frightening experience. I remained seated at my seat. Watching myself sit here and ignore my kids, I started to get upset at the way I had dealt with them. Why aren't I holding them? I wondered, remembering how much I loved them. This is wrong. They need me. Shame filled me as I looked at their faces. Turning back to their corner where my wife was, I saw that she had died. Her eyes stared out lifelessly from her grey body. I did not move from my chair towards her or comfort my children, who were now waiting. Instead, I sat there staring into space as if it were my body that was lifeless, not my beloved wife's. Images began floating into my mind, showing me the years directly after my death. I became withdrawn and bitter, spending my time alone and miserable. I lost my spark and my love for my life, and I never regained the part of myself. My work, which I hadn't minded before, was now seemed like drudgery. My evenings were spent sitting in my chair, staring into space. I could feel my incredible loneliness despite the fact that I had three children who needed me more than ever to care for them. How selfish of me, I thought. As a feeling of remorse washed over me, I loved them. Why was I neglecting them? I moved ahead the last day of that lifetime and immediately felt a crushing pressure on my chest. The sensation was so intense that I had to remind myself where I was, that it was impossible that something could actually be crushing me. It felt so real, and I fought the panic that began to creep in. It was hard to breathe, and my chest rose and fell with great effort. The air smelled of the sea once more. I was back on the docks where I worked. There's confusion as to what was happening, and then instantly I was lighter. As I drew a breath, oxygen filled my lungs with so much more ease. The sensation that had made my chest seem so heavy was gone, and I could see then what was happening as it was no longer dark around me. I was floating above the body of this man that I had been. He was lying lifeless on the ground, a few of those heavy barrels on top of his body. They had fallen down from the ship above and had accidentally landed on top of him, completely crushing his chest. I felt light as air as it hovered above this terrible scene of my death. The contrast between the heaviness I felt in this body and the complete weightlessness as I was now experiencing stunned me. I was as if they were made of nothing, yet I knew that I was still very much who it was that I am. My broken body lay useless and abandoned, and I still existed. I began to move upward, feeling beautiful and free, experiencing an elation unlike any I had ever known. A bright light appeared in the distance. It was in front of me, but higher, in clouds that began to thin into mist. The colors inside these misty clouds were of every imaginable hue and so vivid I knew they could not be perceived by any human eyes. I could feel myself being gently drawn towards this incredibly brilliant light, and the tremendous, peaceful feeling washed over me as I gazed at it. A strange, humming, peaceful sound increased in intensity the closer I came to the light, vibrating through my whole being. The electric vibration consumed me, and it felt like I was being recharged. There did not seem to be an edge that the light began. It just gradually enveloped me until the light that I had merged with. I was as if it were light, the light. Even though I still had a sense of myself and where my own boundaries lay, I was home once again, back where I belonged, feeling completely at peace. And then I saw her. She was standing there, looking expectantly at me with a warm smile and her rosy apple cheeks. My mother, who had been my wife, was waiting for me. Upon seeing her, I felt an overwhelmingly love unlike anything I knew I was capable of outside this light. She did not say a word. She just embraced me fully as my lightness, as my nothingness fell completely into hers. We had no human form to prevent our complete connection, and our pure love passed directly into each other. I was filled with her, and she with me. In this state of completeness, complete bliss, I heard Dr. Wise ask a question: what is the lesson that you learned from this life that which is important for you to know in your current life? I didn't even have to think of the answer as a wave of remorse, return for my actions as that man. People die. It's a part of life. I said, you cannot let your loss keep you from living your life to its fullest. My children needed me, yet I could not escape my own grief to be there for them. It's important to grieve our losses, but then we must accept them and move on. After I finished the last sentence, the connection to my current life became clear. I had lost my mother to Hodgkin's lymphoma in 1977 and spent the better part of my formative years grieving her. It had been especially difficult the last few years after having become a mother myself. The loss of her felt constant and inescapable. At that moment, I was ready to put my grief aside and move on with my life, I knew beyond any doubt that I would see her again and that our love for each other would never die. Feeling in a heaviness lift from my heart, I acknowledged that I would always miss her, but that it was time to release her. I had never felt so free as the tears flowed down my cheeks. My deep sorrow had been replaced with a warm comfort. I had experienced firsthand that she continues to exist and always will. As I emerged from the hypnotic state, I took a very deep breath and then slowly opened my eyes, blinking to bring the room in which I was physically present back into focus. I immediately noticed that something was different. In front of me were the hundreds of faces I had seen earlier that had witnessed this incredible experience. Only now, they each appeared to have a soft and ethereal glow emanating from them. These glows appeared in various shapes and shades and colors, the perimeter stretching farther away from some than others. Scanning the audience's eye tingled from head to toe as I beheld this glorious and otherworldly vision. Auras. I had never seen anything so beautiful as these people. I'm still feeling light and energized. I absorbed each one with me, says Michelle Brock. In a beautiful and comprehensive description of the cycles of life and death and life again, Michelle confirms and validates Alice's lesson and the very same wisdom perceived by Amy's clients, Jessica. Jessica said, "We are not supposed to be miserable." There was so much good she could have done, Alice said. We must move on after tragedy. There are always gifts on the other side of difficulty. Michelle knew deeply that it was important to grieve our losses, but then we must accept them and move on. Each saw and felt the paralysis a grief could cause. Each saw and felt the pain and waste that a paralysis could cause. Michelle believed that she had no memories of her mother, yet within minutes, and even in the potentially uncomfortable position of being on stage in front of many observers, she was vividly recalling detailed scenes. Her remembrances were not only visual, she could feel the vinyl seat, she could taste the bland applesauce, she could hear her mother's soft voice, and she became overwhelmed with emotion. The decades long separation from her mother was bridged in an instant, and her loneliness and grief would never again be so severe. We can remember everything, just like Michelle, a harbor, a wealth of memories in the locked treasure chest of our subconscious mind. They unlock the chest and to recuperate the scenes and images of our loved ones. When they were young and healthy, we only need the key. The key is this regression technique, so safe, so simple, and then we too can once again see the smiling faces, feel their arms around, smell their perfume, and back in the love. Furthermore, we can access a particular past life as often as we wish and as often as we need, just as we can with a conscious memory. Perhaps not all lessons and understandings from the lifetime experienced during a regression can be extracted the very first time. We can go back and receive more details or to explore the life of the other deeper levels. There is no expiration date on a memory. But our dear ones are not just memories, their souls survive the death of the physical body. Michelle was twice reunited with her mother's soul, in addition to the wonderful reunion on the other side, her mother waiting for her in the light. We never lose our loved ones. I'm reminded of what I have heard and experienced in many times with my patients. Whether the message is heard in a dream in which the departed loved one appears in a meditation during a regression, or just being whispered into a ear, as Richard whispered into the ears of Lee and the boys. Just remarkably clear and consistent. Do not grieve so much for love. I am still there. I'm always with you, and I will always live with you forever. So, we've read these five stories for letting go of our grief. And today we'll conclude the day with a very short and beautiful meditation. Some of you may want to continue this feeling or this meditation state even after the session ends, and that is absolutely okay. I want us all to close our eyes, get comfortable in our bodies, lie if you must, and be aware of your breath work. Let's just go deep within us. Keep breathing and find the jewels hidden in there. Think of any one person who has crossed over, who's no longer in the physical body, has had a death, namely of the physical body. Let's visualize ourselves with that loved one in his or her living avatar form. And connect from soul to soul and see what magic awaits you. There's no rush. Just be aware. Be aware of the conversations, of the feeling of the exchange. Let's be aware. Let's be aware of this love, this unconditional love, which always exists. Let's be beautifully enveloped in this world of oneness. Whoever can get whatever message from their loved ones, do that. It's not imagination. Connect with yourself, with your loved one, and feel the connection for as long as you want. It's pure love flowing in.